You ever notice how rain changes the world? It's like the whole planet exhales, and for a moment, everything feels softer, quieter, safer. I'm sitting here now, mug of something hot in my hands. The kind of night where the rain drums steady against the window and the wind rattles the old glass just enough to remind you you're alone. Maybe you're curled up somewhere, two blanket pulled tight, lights low, the world outside washed away by the storm. It's easy to believe nothing bad can reach you when the weather's like this. But that's the first lie the rain tells. If you're watching this alone, you might want to check your locks. Not to scare you, well, maybe a little, but because nights like this have a way of making you forget what's out there, or what might be looking in. I've always loved storms. There's something comforting about the way they drown out the world, make you feel like you're the only person left. But I learned, not so long ago, that isolation is a double-edged sword. When you're alone, you notice things you'd rather ignore. A shadow that lingers too long. A face in the glass that isn't yours. The sound of footsteps, muffled by the rain, that stop just outside your door. Tonight, I want to share 3 stories with you. Not urban legends. Not campfire tales. These are things that happened to me, or to people I trust. Stories that have haunted me, that I can't quite explain away. And I'll warn you now. The last one, I've never told in full before. Some people who've heard pieces of it say they started noticing things, strange dreams, odd coincidences, a sense that something was watching. Maybe it's just the power of suggestion. Or maybe some secrets are best left undiscovered. But enough about the weather. Let me tell you about the first night I realized not all storms come from the sky. I used to think the scariest thing about living alone was the silence. I was wrong. Silence is a luxury. It's the things that break it, the things you can't explain that really get under your skin. It was late October, the kind of night where the rain comes down in sheets, and the wind makes the trees outside my apartment scrape against the siding like bony fingers. I just moved in a few weeks before, still getting used to the creaks and groans of the old building. I'd convinced myself that living alone would be peaceful, a chance to finally have my own space. I didn't realize how quickly peace can turn to paranoia. That night, I was curled up on the couch, half watching some forgettable show, half listening to the storm. I remember thinking how cozy it all felt, blanket, tea, the soft glow of the lamp. The world outside was a blur of rain and darkness, and I was safe inside my little bubble. Or so I thought. It started with a feeling. You know, the one like someone's eyes are on you, even when you're alone. I tried to shake it off, blaming the storm for making me jumpy. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It grew, prickling at the back of my neck, making me glance over my shoulder every few minutes. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Still, I got up to check the locks, front door, back door, even the windows. Everything was secure. I laughed at myself, a little embarrassed, and texted my friend Jamie. Me. Storm's making me paranoid. Feels like someone's watching me. Jamie. LOL, you're just not used to being alone. Put on something funny and chill out. Me. Yeah, you're right. I'm just being weird. I tried to take Jamie's advice, but the feeling only got worse. I started noticing little things, a shadow that seemed to move in the corner of my eye. The way the rain sounded different against the window, almost like tapping. I told myself it was just branches, but the tapping was too rhythmic, too deliberate. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked over to the window. The streetlights were barely visible through the rain, everything outside distorted and shimmering. I pressed my face close to the glass, squinting into the darkness. Nothing. Just the empty street, the skeletal trees, the endless rain. I was about to turn away when I saw a pale shape just beyond the edge of the light. At first, I thought it was a trick of the water on the glass, but then it moved. Slowly, deliberately, it stepped closer until I could make out the outline of a face. Not a person exactly. The features were wrong, too long, too thin, the eyes too wide and dark. It was staring straight at me. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The face didn't move, didn't blink. It just watched. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the coffee table, and grabbed my phone with shaking hands. Me, calling Jamie. Hey, are you still up? Jamie. Yeah, what's up? Me. There's someone outside my window. I swear I just saw a face. Jamie. Are you sure? Maybe it's just your reflection. Me? No, it's not me. I don't know what it is. It's just standing there, staring. Jamie, call the cops. Seriously, I'll stay on the line. I hung up and dialed 911, my voice barely steady as I explained what I'd seen. The dispatcher was calm, almost bored, like she'd heard it all before. Dispatcher, is the person still there? Me? I don't know. I'm not looking. Dispatcher, stay inside. Officers are on their way. Don't open the door for anyone. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, phone clutched to my chest. Every minute felt like an hour. I kept glancing at the window, half expecting to see that face pressed against the glass. But there was nothing. Just the rain, and the wind, and the shadows. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. They searched the yard, checked the windows, even walked the perimeter with flashlights. Nothing. No footprints. No sign that anyone had been there. One of the officers, a tired-looking guy with a mustache, asked if I'd been drinking, or if I'd taken anything to help me sleep. I told him no, and he just nodded, like he didn't believe me. Before they left, the younger officer pulled me aside. Officer, you're not the first person on this street to call about something like this. Last week, the woman 2 doors down said she saw someone watching her from the trees. We never found anything. Probably just kids messing around. He didn't sound convinced. After they left, I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face. I kept telling myself it was just the storm, just my imagination. But the feeling of being watched never really went away. The next morning, I found something that made my blood run cold. On the outside of the window, right where I'd seen the face, were 3 long, thin smudges like someone had dragged their fingers down the glass. The prints were too long, the spacing all wrong for a human hand. I took a picture, but when I tried to show it to Jamie later, the image was just a blur, like the camera couldn't focus on it. I tried to put it out of my mind, but over the next few weeks, I started hearing stories from my neighbors. People talking in hushed voices about the Watcher, a figure seen at windows late at night, always during storms. Some said it was a ghost, others said it was something worse. A few claimed it could get inside if you looked at it too long. I did some digging, even tried to file a report with the police. But when I asked for a copy of my call, they told me the file was sealed. Ongoing investigation, they said, but nothing ever came of it. The story just disappeared. Sometimes, late at night, I still feel those eyes on me. I've moved since then, but the feeling follows. I keep my curtains closed, my windows locked, but it doesn't help. When the rain is heavy and the wind howls, I catch glimpses just for a second of that pale face in the glass. I tell myself it's just my imagination, just a trick of the light. But deep down, I know better. I never found out what it wanted. But sometimes, when the rain hits my window just right, I swear I see its reflection. But that's just the first story. You know, after I posted my last story about the window, I started getting messages, dozens of them. Some of you in the comments said you've seen things at your window too. Faces you couldn't quite describe, shadows that didn't belong to anyone in your house. One person even sent me a blurry photo of what looked like a handprint on the outside of their second-story window. I wish I could say that made me feel less alone, but honestly, it just makes me wonder how many of us are being watched and never realize it. I love reading your theories, by the way. Some of you think it's all just sleep deprivation, or maybe a trick of the light. Others are convinced there's something out there, something that only shows itself when the world is quiet and the rain drowns out the sound of its footsteps. I'm not sure which idea is scarier. If you've got a story of your own, drop it in the comments. I read every single one, even if I don't always reply. Sometimes your stories are the only thing that makes me feel like I'm not losing my mind. And who knows, maybe your experience will help someone else sleep a little easier. Or not. But if you thought the last story was unsettling, the next one is even stranger. It's the reason I never take shortcuts through the woods anymore. I used to think getting home faster was worth a little risk. Now I know better. Ready for story number 2? Just remember, sometimes the shortest path is the most dangerous. When I was a kid, I thought I was invincible. You know the feeling when the world is still big and mysterious, but you're sure nothing bad can happen to you. I grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone. and the woods behind our neighborhood were both our playground and our shortcut. There was a path, barely more than a deer trail, that cut through the trees and came out right behind the old elementary school. If you took it, you could shave 10 minutes off your walk home. Everyone used it, even though our parents told us not to. There was a rule, though: never leave the path. It was one of those things adults said with a little too much seriousness, like they knew something we didn't. Stay on the trail, and you'll be fine, my mom would say, her voice tight. Don't go wandering off. I always rolled my eyes. What was going to happen, really? Get lost for a few minutes? Maybe run into a raccoon? I was 11 the first time I broke the rule. It was a Friday, and the sky was already heavy with clouds when the last bell rang. My friend Tyler and I were supposed to walk home together, but he'd stayed late for detention. I didn't want to wait, so I set off alone, backpack bouncing, sneakers squelching in the mud. The air smelled like wet leaves and distant thunder. Halfway through the woods, the rain started sudden and hard, the kind that soaks you in seconds. I pulled my hood up and started to run, feet slipping on the slick ground. That's when I heard it, a voice, soft and sing-song, drifting through the trees. Hey you. I stopped, heart hammering. It sounded like a kid, maybe a little younger than me. I looked around, but the woods were empty except for the rain. I told myself it was just the wind, but then I heard it again, closer this time. Hey, my name? Come here. I froze. No one should have known my name out there. I hadn't told anyone I was taking the shortcut, and Tyler was still at school. The voice was wrong, too smooth, too calm, like someone imitating a child but not quite getting it right. I should have run. Instead, I stepped off the path. The woods changed immediately. The air felt heavier, the trees closer together. The rain seemed to muffle all sound, except for the voice, which was suddenly everywhere. Over here. I want to show you something. I walked, branches snagging at my jacket, mud sucking at my shoes. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead, but the voice kept calling, always just out of sight. I stumbled into a small clearing, and that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a person, a tall, thin figure standing perfectly still in the center of the clearing. But as I got closer, I realized something was off. Its arms were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its face was blank, except for a wide, lipless smile and eyes that were just holes. Not empty, exactly, but deep, like looking into a well at midnight. It spoke without moving its mouth. Lost, are you? The words echoed inside my head, cold and sharp. I tried to back away, but my feet wouldn't move. I felt like I was sinking, the mud pulling me down. The thing took a step closer, its movements jerky and wrong. You left the path. That's not allowed. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. The thing leaned down, its face inches from mine. I could smell earth and rot and something sweet, like overripe fruit. Don't worry, it whispered. I'll help you find your way, but you have to promise me something. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Tell others. Tell them about me, or I'll come back for you. The next thing I remember, I was running, branches whipping my face, lungs burning. I burst out of the woods, right behind the school, and collapsed on the wet grass. I didn't look back. I told myself it was a nightmare, a trick of the storm and my overactive imagination. But when I got home, my mom took one look at me, muddy, shaking, eyes wild, and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. She didn't ask what happened. She just said, "You left the path, didn't you?" I nodded, and she made me promise never to do it again. I kept that promise. But the thing in the woods didn't forget me. For years, I tried to convince myself it wasn't real. But then I started hearing stories, kids going missing, people seeing strange figures in the trees during storms. Tyler told me once, years later, that he'd heard a voice calling his name when he took the shortcut alone. He never told anyone else, but he never used the path again. As I got older, I moved away, tried to leave the past behind. But sometimes, when I'm alone and the rain is coming down hard, I hear it again, a whisper, just at the edge of hearing. Hey, remember me? I've seen it too. Not often, but enough to know it's not just a childhood nightmare. Once, walking home late at night, I caught a glimpse of something tall and thin standing under a streetlight, watching me. Another time, I found muddy footprints outside my apartment, door too big for any person, space too far apart. I started looking into local legends, trying to find answers. Turns out, my town isn't the only place with stories about the thing in the woods. Some call it the Watcher, others the Pathkeeper. There are old newspaper clippings about missing hikers, strange sightings, even a police report from the 70s that was never explained. The details change, but the warning is always the same: never leave the path. I posted about it online once, half joking, half desperate for someone to tell me I was crazy. Instead, I got messages from people all over the country, stories that sounded just like mine. Some even described the same voice, the same impossible smile. A few said the thing followed them, too, showing up in dreams or reflected in dark windows. I still hear it sometimes, whispering my name when I'm alone. I keep my curtains closed, avoid shortcuts, and never, ever leave the path if I can help it. But I know it's out there, waiting, watching. The worst part is, I think it wants more than just to scare people. I think it collects stories, memories, promises, maybe even people. And every time someone breaks the rule, it gets a little stronger, a little closer. I wish I could say that was the last time I saw it. But some things follow you home. And some stories, you can't escape. I have to admit, sometimes I wonder if sharing these stories is a good idea. Some of you have noticed the pattern. You're not wrong. There's something about rain, about being alone, about the way the world changes when you think no one's watching. I see your comments connecting the dots, how the Watcher at the window and the thing in the woods both seem to know your name, how they always show up when the storm is at its worst. Some of you even pointed out that these stories aren't just mine. They're echoes, rippling out through different towns, different lives, always with the same rules and the same warnings. I love the theories you come up with. Some of you think it's all one entity, changing shape to fit the fear. Others say it's a kind of curse, passed along in stories, growing stronger every time someone listens. I wish I could tell you you're wrong. I wish I could say these are just coincidences, just the mind playing tricks. But the truth is, the more I talk about it, the more I notice things I can't explain. At least the rain covers the sound of my heartbeat. If you're still watching, you might want to leave a light on. The last story is the one I've tried hardest to forget. It's the most disturbing and the least explained. I've never told it in full, not here, not anywhere. But tonight, with the rain coming down and the world feeling just a little too quiet, it feels like the right time. This last story, I've never told it in full. Until now. There are some nights when the rain feels endless, like the world is being washed away and rebuilt in the dark. This story happened on one of those nights, a night so soaked and heavy that even the streetlights looked like they were drowning. I remember thinking, as I watched the water slide down the window, that it was the perfect night to disappear. I didn't know then how close I'd come. It started like any other evening. I was alone, of course. I'd made a cup of tea, curled up with a book, and let the storm outside become a kind of white noise. There's a comfort in routine, in the small rituals that make a place feel safe. I'd always believed that as long as I kept to my habits, locked the doors, checked the windows, kept the lights on, I could keep the darkness at bay. But that night, the rain was different. It was relentless, pounding, almost angry. The power flickered once, twice, and then held steady, but the air felt charged, like the world was waiting for something to happen. I was halfway through a chapter when my phone rang. The screen said unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. I picked up, expecting a robocall or a wrong number. Instead, there was only static at first, a low hiss that made the hair on my arms stand up. Then, beneath the static, I heard a voice. My own voice. "Hello," it said, perfectly mimicking my tone, my inflection. "Can you hear me?" I froze. For a moment, I thought it was a glitch, some weird echo. But then the voice spoke again, and this time, it was different, warmer, almost amused. If you hear your own voice on the phone, hang up. Don't listen to what it says. I hung up, heart pounding. I stared at the phone, half expecting it to ring again. It didn't. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself it was just a prank, maybe a recording. But the unease lingered, thick as the storm outside. I went back to my book, but the words wouldn't settle. Every time the wind rattled the window, I jumped. Every time the house creaked, I imagined footsteps in the hall. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I'd let the stories get to me. But then the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID was blank. Just a black screen. I let it go to voicemail, but the ringing didn't stop. It kept going, insistent, until I couldn't take it anymore. I answered, voice shaking. Hello. Silence. Then, a whisper, so soft I almost missed it. Let me in. I hung up again, hands trembling. I turned off the phone, but the ringing continued, echoing through the house. I checked every room, every lock, every window. Everything was secure, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming, like eyes pressed against the glass, waiting for me to slip. I tried to distract myself, turn on the TV, but every channel was static. The rain outside grew louder, drowning out everything else. I thought about calling someone, Jamie, maybe, or my mom, but I couldn't shake the feeling that if I reached out, I'd be putting them in danger too. That's when the knocking started. It was soft at first, barely audible over the storm. 3 slow knocks, perfectly spaced, like someone was testing the strength of the door. I crept to the peephole, heart in my throat. There was no one there. Just the empty porch, the rain pouring down in sheets. I backed away, trying to convince myself it was just the wind, a branch, anything but what it felt like. But then the knocking came again, louder this time, and from the window behind me. I spun around, and for a split second, I saw a shape, a tall, thin figure, face obscured by the rain, standing just outside the glass. I blinked, and it was gone. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed. Eventually, the phone started ringing again. This time, I let it go. I sat on the floor, knees to my chest, listening to the storm and the endless, insistent ringing. At some point, I must have fallen asleep. I woke to silence. The rain finally stopped. The world washed clean. For a moment, I thought it was over. But then I saw the message on my phone. One new voicemail. No number. I pressed play, and my own voice filled the room. Thank you for letting me in. I dropped the phone. My skin crawled. I checked every door, every window, but nothing was out of place. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just the lingering sense that something had changed, that the house was no longer entirely mine. I tried to go about my day, but everything felt off. My reflection in the mirror seemed a little too slow to follow. My voice sounded strange, unfamiliar. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, a shadow in the hallway, a face in the window, always gone when I looked directly. That night, the rain returned, harder than before. I tried to sleep, but the dreams were worse. I saw myself standing outside my own house, watching through the window. I saw myself answering the phone, letting something in. I woke up gasping, convinced I wasn't alone. The calls kept coming, always during storms. Sometimes it was my voice, sometimes it was a stranger's, always asking the same thing. Let me in. I stopped answering, but the messages kept piling up. I changed my number, got a new phone, but it didn't matter. The calls always found me. I started researching, desperate for answers. That's when I found the story's old forum posts, police reports, even a few news articles. People all over the country, all over the world, describing the same thing. Phone calls during storms, voices that sounded like their own, visitors who claimed to be collecting stories. Some called them the rain callers. Others said they were something older, something that fed on fear and memory. There were rules, too. Never answer the call during a storm. Never invite a stranger in, no matter how familiar they seem. And above all, never listen to your own voice on the line. I wish I could say I followed those rules. But curiosity is a powerful thing. The last time the phone rang, I answered. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I just wanted it to stop. The voice on the other end was mine, but not. It was colder, emptier, like someone wearing my skin. It's your turn now, it said. You've heard the stories. You've told them. Now you're part of them. The line went dead. The rain stopped. And for a while, everything was quiet. But things haven't been the same since. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear the phone ring, even when it's turned off. Sometimes, I catch my reflection smiling when I'm not. I see things in the rain, faces, hands, shapes that shouldn't be there. I started getting messages from people who had heard my story. Some said they'd started having strange dreams, seeing things at their windows, getting calls from numbers that didn't exist. A few said they'd heard my voice on the line, asking to be let in. I don't know what the rain callers are, or what they want. Maybe they're just stories, passed along like a virus, growing stronger every time someone listens. Maybe there's something older, something that's always been here, waiting for the right night, the right storm. All I know is, I can't escape them. And now, neither can you. I don't know if telling you this will help, or just make things worse. But if you hear the rain tonight, listen closely. If the phone rings, and you hear your own voice on the other end, hang up. Don't listen to what it says. And whatever you do, don't let it in. If you've made it this far, you're braver than most. Or maybe you just haven't heard your name whispered in the rain yet. I wish I could say these stories have tidy endings, that the things we fear are just shadows that vanish with the sunrise. But the truth is, some storms never really pass. They linger, echoing in the corners of your mind, waiting for the next quiet night, the next downpour, the next moment you let your guard down. I still find myself listening for footsteps when the rain gets heavy, checking the windows twice, ignoring the phone when it rings with no caller ID. Old habits, I guess, or maybe just a survival instinct. It's strange, isn't it? How something as simple as a rainy night can make the world feel both safe and dangerous at the same time. The comfort of a warm drink, a soft blanket, the steady rhythm of water on glass, those things are real. But so is the feeling that something is watching, just out of sight, waiting for you to look away. If you've ever experienced something you can't explain, a face at the window, a voice in the static, a shadow that didn't belong, let me know in the comments. I read every story, every theory, every nervous laugh. Maybe together, we can make sense of the things that haunt us. Or maybe we'll just add a few more chapters to the legend. And if you're new here, or if you've been listening for a while, remember, some stories are warnings. Some are invitations. Be careful what you invite in on a rainy night. Not every knock is a neighbor, and not every voice on the line is your own. The rain is still falling outside my window. Maybe it's just weather. Or maybe it's something else, waiting for me to finish this story, to turn off the lights, to listen. I'll be here, waiting out the storm. Unless the storm finds me first.